Today is Wednesday, March 26, 2025, and I'm Jeanette Pincus, and I get the honor of interviewing Susan Schackman, who's currently has been also on our Dallas Jewish Historical Society board, and she's come today to share her story about being a caterer in the Dallas Jewish community for many, many years, and to be part of our project of keeping kosher in Dallas. So Susan, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So first I'd like to begin with is what your background is with your family. So I guess that'll give us this idea of how you even got into the catering.
Well, I was raised in Waco, Texas, and lived in Austin for a while. And then when I got married, I moved to Dallas. My mother was raised in Dallas and was a Sunday school teacher at Temple Emmanuel, and her father, though, belonged to Anshe Sfard, the Romanian shul. So my husband was born and raised in Dallas. We've lived here for almost 60 years, and I've become a part of this community. I love the area. We've been a member of Shearith Israel all this time. And how I got into catering was I used to do it for Shearith Israel Sisterhood. I used to do all of their meetings and their projects, and one day one of the women called me and she said, "You know, I have company coming, and I'm going to be gone all day. Do you think if I buy the food, would you make it and just bring it over?" Her name was Janice Falk. So I did, and from there I went into business, because from there I got several other people who wanted to know if I would do it for them. And then I started charging a little bit. And there were those who got really good deals, because I had no idea what I was doing. And there were those who didn't get quite such a good deal until I figured it all out. But that's how I got into it.
And you mentioned about the kosher aspect of it is from your...
My grandparents kept strictly kosher in Waco. There was no one to come and kill the animals or the chickens, and so they would come to my grandfather's house, and we would all be there, and we would all run outside and watch the chickens run around after their heads were gone. And my grandfather, Zella Sobel, used to tell the story, this was before my time, had a, quote, what she called a kosher cow. And so they always had kosher dairy for Passover, and no one in Dallas did. So he would take his cow about a month before Passover to a different place to graze only on pure grass, and then they would bring him back, and they would have kosher dairy for Passover. So that had always been kind of my thing about why keep kosher, and I do keep strictly kosher during Passover. But that's how I really kind of thought about it all the time.
When you mentioned your grandparents, what was... So, I know you're married, so what was their last name?
Their name was Lipinski. My maiden name was Lipinski. My grandfather was Frank and Thelma, Timsha and Fievel Lipinski. And my parents were even Bill Lipinski, and my sister was Joanne Lipinski Becker now.
And so your grandparents, I guess...
Everything was done...
how'd they get to Waco?
Okay. Well, now this is another long story.
Yeah.
My grandfather came in 1913 through Galveston. And he came alone. I think actually his sister came with him. And he left my father, my grandmother, my aunt, and uncle in Poland. He came to Galveston and was sent to Fort Worth, where he lived in a rooming house, a kosher rooming house. And the only place that he could find work was at a hog factory. So he would come home from work every night, and the lady who owned the rooming house would put a pail of water outside, and he would come and he'd take the pail of water and drench himself from head to toe with the water to wash everything away. And she would leave like a towel or a robe or something, and he would throw all of his stuff down and go in and change clothes, and that's how he lived. 7 years later, he sent for my father and grandmother and the rest of them. And they came in 1920. And by then he had moved to Waco, and he was a tailor.
And he got to Waco because...
He knew someone there. One of his, he used to call him my lawnsman, and they lived in Waco, and they had moved there actually, I think, from Shreveport. So anyway, when he came, he told my grandfather, hey, this is a pretty good deal here, and they need tailors. So that's what he was in Poland. And so he came and he went to work for Levine's actually at first, I think. And then he worked for another company. And then he did his own thing too, out of his house.
So I know that there was a strong Jewish community at that time too.
In Waco we had a synagogue and a temple. It was never a big community, but it was a very close community. Everything really revolved around the synagogue. In fact, I was the first bat mitzvah in Waco at Agudath Jacob. Long time ago.
So, so it sounds like you were very much influenced with your grandparents about being kosher.
Right.
The cooking, how was that from who?
From my grandmother.
Okay.
My grandmother we used to tease her that she could go out and pick weeds, and it would be the most wonderful tasting thing in the world. We had all holidays at their house. Everything was done at their place. And in fact, my cousins used to laugh because on Sunday, after Sunday school, we would all go by and she would make potato kugel for everybody. My father would always get the best because he got the crust. But anyway, I watched her. She never let us actually do things, but when I got married, I wanted to make challah. At that point, Bubby was in a wheelchair, and she said, well, come and sit and watch me. So as she would take a handful of flour and put it in a thing, I would take her handful out and measure it. And so I went home and I made challah. And it didn't quite come out the same way. And so when I saw her the next time, because you didn't call at that point, her question was, what kind of a towel did you put over while it was raising? And I said, I don't know, dish towel. She says, was it white? I said, no, I don't own a white. She says, of course not. You're newly married. How would you have a white towel? Go get a white muslin towel, and that's the colors keep it from rising as well. And sure enough, the next time I made it. So anyway, that's how everything I made. In fact, I did a cookbook for our family from my grandmother's recipes, and so she was my main influence.
So that's special. So when you were doing the catering, what were the specialties that you had?
Well, I made all sorts of Jewish food, of course. I made really good kugels and poached salmon and dill sauce and meringues and all. I mean, a little bit of everything. It's funny. I ran into someone a few weeks ago who I had done their daughter's bat mitzvah, and we had. She says, everything was wonderful, but you make the best tuna fish of anybody. And I thought, how silly. But it's interesting the things people remember. So I do a little bit of everything.
Was there anything that stands out that you, event that you did or someone that you worked with that?
Well, one of my favorite events was the 100th anniversary at Cherith Israel. And that one we did, it was me, Zella Sobel, Bertha Spiritus, and Naomi Scherf. And the four of us worked together and did the evening gala. And we had more fun, and everybody was just pitching in and doing whatever anybody else needed doing. There was never a hierarchy, and I was a new kid on the block. So they were wonderful to me, and it was really a fun thing. One of the funniest things that happened is I was doing a Shabbos dinner at Tifereth Israel one Friday, and I was getting ready to make chopped liver. And Rabbi Weiss, who was the rabbi there at that time, came in and he says, Susan, what are you going to do with those livers? And I said, well, I'm going to make chopped liver. He said, you can't make chopped liver here. There's no broiler. And I said, oh, didn't think about that. What do I do? He says, get your stuff, get in my car, I'll take you home. So we went over to his house and made chopped liver for 120 people. And so it was a funny incident.
That is.
It was just a kind of a fun, and he was very, very, very nice about it.
Yeah.
But it's been a very interesting career. I was in it for 28 and a half years before I retired. Did a lot at Sheriff Israel, did a lot at Tifereth. I worked at the Temple Emmanuel. And one of the funniest ones was the Temple Shalom, because I used to make a lot. I'd make like 1,000 potato latkes at a time. And Cantor Kroll was my number one. He would come in, and it never failed. He would come from his office, he would smell it. And he'd come in and he says, "This is your number one schnorr. Can I start tasting?" So I always put away a little bit for him every time. So it was just a fun, and you dealt with people when they were happy.
Yes.
So it was a good thing. Been a fun career.
Well, thank you. Is there anything else that you want to share now? I mean, you've been in the community for a while.
60 years.
Right.
Almost.
And you've seen the community change.
Right. It is really wonderful to see how many kosher restaurants are here now. How many kosher venues there are now. When you wanted to have something years ago, it had to be in your home if you kept kosher, or at one of the synagogues, or at the J. But now there are actually some really nice places you can have. The hotels will do it. So it's been a real influx into the Dallas community. And it's really very, very nice. I'm sorry that we don't have a kosher butcher, just a kosher strange butcher like we used to years ago. That was my first introduction to Dallas kosher food. Was my first Passover here. I went shopping with my mother-in-law, and we went to Fromm's.
Oh, Fromm's.
So
Okay.
Mr. Fromm's, he and his daughter Miriam, I believe was her name, and they were next door. They were on Inwood, on Lover's Lane, I believe. And they were next door to a Christie's fish market. So we went and bought ordered our kosher meat, and then went over and ordered the fish for gefilte fish. So that was my first real introduction to actually cooking my own stuff.
So Fromm's when was that around? Do you?
Oh, golly, well, they were there. I got married in '65, so they were there then. And they've been there for a long time. I think they may have been in South Dallas, I'm not sure.
They moved down there, okay.
And then, of course, from after Fromm's, then there was Reichman's and
Debbie Linksman.
Debbie Linksman. They bought it, But, and Reichman's, God, I wish I could remember his name. Lorenzo, thank you. Lorenzo was, you could call Lorenzo and he would have everything done for you and ready for you to walk in and walk out.
Yes.
He was the best.
Yes.
In fact, I walked in one day and he was cute. He says, today's my bar mitzvah day.
Yeah.
I said, it is. He said, I've been here 13 years. He was the best.
Yes, he was fun.
He was fun.
Yeah. Well, Susan, thank you so much for sharing and being part of about being kosher in Dallas and being there for all these wonderful events that we've had to share with families.
Thank you for wanting to interview me, and it's been a pleasure. I'm part of this community, and I love this community.
Yes, thank you.